what really stood out for me is when you mentioned how your family's like, now you're doing too much. It just really struck out for me because recently my dad was just saying that, I think she's doing too much. And then he made this statement, which actually made me think because he was like, she is just escaping reality by, praying or whatever, but she's not taking action or she's not facing the reality, which I thought was really interesting because even I started thinking then, oh my God, am I actually just escaping reality? Have you ever felt that this path kind of can feel like you're just running away? But I also think I would rather just, take God's name and spend time with God rather than doing
Yeah,
something else, honestly.
yeah. It's a very interesting question, and the answer is I feel very, very delicate because there is a part of it is true and part of it is
Yeah.
not. The problem is when you stop doing the inner work and shadow work and you completely shift that responsibility from yourself to Devi or some higher force or mantra. That's when it becomes the problem that you are not doing anything for yourself. You're neither moving your body, nor journaling, nor sitting with your grief, not changing your patterns, not understanding your own limitation, not working off any of those. I'm experiencing pain because of this certain wound, and
Mm,
I'm doing the sadhana to like get past that. It is never
mm,
going to work out.
yeah.
In that case, it becomes escapism. There are some people who want to learn about tantra, who want to do sadhana. So different people I work with, and I tell everybody that I am here to only share my experience with you and share the tools with you. I am not going to fix your problem. You have to work through that.
Yeah.
So, yes, it can be escapist path and it can be escapism only if you are completely relying on your tantric or your bhakti or any
Yeah.
kind of practice without working on your own shadows, without working on your own
Mm,
self. It's like you have a problem in your digestive system. You're neither changing your food habit, nor you are doing yoga, nor you are breathing right, nothing. You all you are doing is you are doing chanting of any deity that is connected to the Manipura chakra, and you are trying to like fix it through that. Where embodiment lacks, you're sitting with that grief. You are allowing yourself to feel. You are allowing yourself to like be in this mess, this darkness. But you do know that it is happening in your favor, and at the same time, you are also like allowing yourself to move past that I am in this
mm,
grief, but I don't want to be in this grief. I don't want to push myself. I don't want to force myself, but this is not where I belong. I deserve
yeah.
better, and I'm going to get out. I need to cut this thing out of my life. It is giving me pain. It is not right for me. It is becoming a blockage. I need to cut it.
Mm,
So you don't become Kali by basically cutting it. You are like, okay, I'm ending a relationship, I'm ending a friendship, I'm leaving a workplace, and I should be completely fine. You can be Kali and you can still cry because you are letting
yeah.
something go. Embodiment is that despite the pain, you're doing it, despite the
Mm,
fear, you're moving in it, in
yeah.
the unknown.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, I don't support the idea of people coming into tantric space, bhakti, or any kind of sadhana to escape their reality. But a part of me also feels that if you are not working on yourself and you're escaping by scrolling reel, then I think sitting with your altar or taking her name is better
Yeah.
escapism for sure.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I guess I do think everyone has like you mentioned their own relationship with God, and I personally don't think any of it is too much. And I mean, at least for me personally, I'm just sharing. For me, it's just I just want to talk to you. That's it. I just want to talk to you. You tell me, because I know you are putting me on the right path anyway. So, like, I don't sit and pray and ask for anything because I actually don't know what's best for me. You know what's best for me. So, I'll just like walk through whatever you put me on.
I
Um,
sit with like some intention only when I'm in a very vulnerable state. Otherwise, I even if I'm sitting with the intention that I want to gain this or do this, and that's why I'm doing it. But the thing is, while you are in the process and while you are doing it, at least for me, I forget that I actually had like something to
hmm,
ask for. You get so lean in the process that you actually forget. And also, there are a lot of times where I feel that I don't need to actually come and tell her that, I need this. That's like,
hmm,
She already knows that I'm
She
going.
knows.
She's living in my body. Like she's
Yeah.
my thought. She's my pulse. She's my prana. She knows it. So what do I tell her? She knows it all.
Yeah. I actually have one question for you. So I have spoken to some people practicing Shakti Tantra, and they were just sharing their practices and thoughts with me. And one of them was like, when we are doing these rituals, especially when we do puja for, Chandi or any of the deities, it's like we have this special kind of connection. It's like you are literally sitting on her lap and telling her stuff. Some people, like especially when they're performing these pujas, they have that kind of relationship with Devi. And that actually got me curious about, there must be so many malpractices happening if you have that kind of connection with Devi. So I even asked them that, and their response was kind of, we have to keep ourselves clean. We need to ask only the right things within what works for the nature. Like, be good, basically. If not, the question that Guruji asked them is, are you ready to live with the after effects? Like, because, Devi can put you in your place easily. So, I mean, I don't know if I asked this question clearly because I was trying to protect their conversation as well. But what I'm trying to say, is there malpractices that happen, or how can someone guard themselves when it comes to tantra rituals?
Definitely malpractices are something that unfortunately some people do. So Shiv and Shakti Tattva is present in both male and female. But what happens is that female naturally have the Shakti flow more in flow or in like regulation than men. So a lot of Tantra sadhak who are not doing this sadhana with the right intention or pure thoughts, what they do is they are enhancing, upgrading, awakening Shakti, right? Or like trying to connect with Shakti. Now, the practice that will take him to do it versus the practice that I will take is going to be very different because I'm naturally in tune with my Shakti. That's how I've been built. So to save the effort, because like it's very fancy to hear that I do sadhana or I'm doing sadhana, but when you have to, like, even when I was doing my last sadhana that I was telling you, Bhuvneshwari sadhana, I had to sit every day at the same place at the same time. Now there were days when I'm sitting with my friends and there's very interesting conversation happening and I don't want to leave, but I have to leave. There are days when I'm sitting and I'm having stomach problem, or I had a fight with somebody and I'm feeling not myself. I want to be in my bed and cry, or I want to watch something, I want to draw something, but I am showing up. So the thing is, it might sound like, oh wow, but when you are doing it, it's sometimes a lot. Okay. So to save that a lot, there are two ways to go up. One is that you work hard and you go up, and second way is who's up, you bring that down and you go up. Unfortunately, most of the people take the second route because it's easier. So yes, that happens, and I'll give you a small story. So I had gone to Kamakhya Devi's Mandir, and I had found a place there, and I was sitting and I was doing my chanting and my eyes were closed. And suddenly I started feeling something very abrupt and weird from my right side. I just felt something not right coming towards me through the right side. It was very like it was becoming very prominent, very strong. And while I was chanting, I opened my eyes and I looked to the right. To my right, and I saw like there was a man and he was looking at me, like gazing non-stop and chanting. And when I made eye contact with him, he was looking at me and he was chanting. And I knew he's not doing something right. I could sense it in my body because, again, like I was in touch with my body and I did not know what to do. But I kept looking at him and I just understood one thing in that moment, that I am not supposed to get scared, because whatever source he's taking that from is my source too. So if that source can give him enough power to like disturb me, that source can give me enough power to protect myself as well. So I looked at him and like the Chandi mantra randomly came to my mind and I started chanting Chandi mantra randomly because I was chanting something else and looking at him straight, and I started chanting. And like after some time, he just got up and he left. So I think it was very important for me to have that experience in Kamakhya campus. And I think she made it happen for a reason. Because one thing that I understood that day was that this is very powerful. And you know how They say that whatever you think, you manifest. That's why whenever you are planning or working on manifestation, it's not just an activity that you sit and you make like vision board and you are manifesting. Let's say you're making a vision board that you're making millions in millions, but you have a scarcity mindset, you're never going to attract million, because this manifests, not the thing that you wrote. So if this can manifest things for you, it can guard you, it can destroy you. Why do people say that atheists are the safest people on this planet? Because they don't believe in God, so they don't believe in demon as well. They don't believe in negative energy. So no matter how much you try to do something to a negative, like an atheist, they will not have an effect will have, because they do not have that belief system. So even if that energy is coming towards their aura, their mindset is rejecting it. That is not letting that energy come into his own auric field. So how does black magic or all these things work? What I have understood is they try to get into your psyche or your consciousness, and they generate fear. Now that fear can happen through a memory that is shown to you, through a bad frequency that has been imparted in your auric field. And what happens is that initially you do not understand it, so you start giving into that fear. You start giving all access, your power, your shakti to that insecurity, that thought. And the more you think about something, the more the things are going to manifest. So they don't manifest these things for you. They manifest your psyche to get disrupted, and then you will manifest it eventually yourself. So this is very, very powerful. And how can this work to protect you? It will only happen with two things. One, complete surrender and complete trust. Trust in the divine, trust in your East, and trust in your own self. That even if somebody tries to do something with me, I have enough knowledge, enough tool, enough Shakti in my body that I can get past this. I can wash this off my auric field. But what happens is that unfortunately, we think that people who can do all these things are powerful. The moment we think they are powerful, we let our power go.
Wow, yeah.
But if you start believing that you are so powerful that no matter if he's a sadhak or he's a practitioner for 30 years, 40 years, you know you are protected, you know that you are guarded, you know that that person cannot do anything, and you are rooted in your essence, in your Shakti, in your practice, it will not come to you. So this is the main protector. So there are a lot of practice that I can tell you, that put salt water, take salt bath, cleanse your house, do this chanting, do that chanting, all of that works. But if you are somebody who does not want to put in that much effort, the thing that you, although this also takes effort, but the thing that you can do is you can make your mindset so strong that nothing penetrates into your auric field. And it works, actually.
Yeah. I think that is actually way harder than doing a salt bath,
Yeah.
actually preparing your mind,
While talking, I
making it
realized.
strong.
Yes.
Like, oh my God, how do I do that? Yeah. But yeah, that is true. I mean, I do think a lot of the times our thoughts only manifest our reality, and we can protect ourselves. I actually did want to ask you, you mentioned, full trust and surrender. We talk so much about surrender. I wanted to know your thoughts on what is true surrender and what do you think it costs?
What I have truly understood about surrender is that it is linked to trust. Trust that everything that is yours will come to you. Trust that everything is happening under divine alignment. Trust that whatever happens, you will figure a way out. Surrender is the same trust that you have either on yourself, on whoever you believe in, on your ancestor, universe, Shiv, Shakti, Allah, Baba, Gurudev, whoever you believe in. Trusting that if this is what you want, they are listening to you, they know it, you have communicated it to them. If it is for you, it will come to you. If it is not for you, you will get the strength to compensate for the void and get something else. But it's easier said than done, because what happens is that we humans have very limited perspectives. What we think is best for us might not be best for us, but because we have not explored our own capacity, our capability, our possibility, we think that this is the best that can happen to us. And in fact, while I'm sharing this to you, I feel like Devi is also reminding me that, because I am also struggling with that I'm trying to control something because I feel that this is the best that can happen. But during these time only is when the surrender actually comes into picture, because rest of the time when you're doing everything right and everything is going fine, it's very easy to trust. But when things don't go your way, how much do you trust is your ability to surrender. So
Mm.
there's no step-by-step process where you can learn how to surrender. There are certain skills that we are born with, and there are certain skills that we teach ourselves.
Mm.
So surrender is something that basically we were supposed to be born with, but
Mm.
because of the environment, like if you see our parents, they used to take so much stress. So we have grown up seeing
Mm.
that outcome needs to be in our control. Otherwise, life is going to be
Yeah.
shattered completely. So unfortunately, a skill that we were supposed to be born with is something that we need to reteach ourselves.
Mm.
So if it is not coming naturally to you, there's nothing wrong with you. We grew up in a world where surrender is something that we don't have a good relationship
Yeah.
with. So it is a skill that you have to teach yourself. How will you teach yourself? By remembering all the times in the past where you lost hope and you thought this is not working in your favor. And later you realize, oh shit, this was working in my favor.
Yeah.
Look, so amazingly this worked out. What happens is that to trust also something, you need to have confidence, right? Confidence comes with experience. Somebody who is a very good orator, their first speech, if you go and listen to it, it will be not as good as their present one because experience gave them confidence, right?
Mm.
So to trust, you need to have confidence. To have confidence, you need to have experience. So if you
Mm.
want to surrender, remember the experiences where you thought that it's not going to work out and it worked out. That will give you confidence to trust again.
Wow, that was so powerful and so well put. I'm so glad I asked
I have,
that.
I
I'm
have,
so
I
glad
have never
surrender came up.
I have never articulated it like this to anybody in my life. I am also really, I've never articulated it. Like I understood it. So that's why thank you for bringing me here because this is the first time I'm able to articulate it like this.
It's gonna like whoever listens to it, it's just gonna like be a head knock because that was really powerful. Thank you so much for saying that.
Thank you for
I
listening.
was just talking about bhakti. So, have you ever experienced bhakti in a way that it dissolved your sense of self? Like, and was it helpful or destructive in some ways?
So the path that I'm on, I came on this path because of bhakti, and bhakti is something that is very personal to me. I feel that I have the most bhakti towards me. I've realized one thing
Wow.
that one of the reasons why I could come so far was because even when I did not have all these knowledge, even when I was the least confident version of myself, and when I was not that intelligent or not that aware, there was like some kind of dedication or bhakti that I had towards myself. I always believed that I deserve so much, and that kept me going. So, bhakti first started, I think, with dedication to my own self because as I told you that I come from a very conservative family, very patriarchal land of this country. So I whatever I dreamt of was too big or unrealistic for people, whether it comes to how I want to receive love, how I want a partner to be, how I want my career to be, how I want my clothes to be. Everything was dismissed and seen as very
Mm.
abnormal. So there were more factors to stop my growth than actually support it. But I feel that I could grow so much was because of a bhakti towards my own self. So my first experience or understanding of bhakti started with myself. And after that, the bhakti started coming towards nature. Now I understand that all these while I had this bhakti towards Shakti because I'm Shakti, nature is Shakti, animals are Shakti. So I was actually being drawn to Shakti without knowing that it is Shakti. But I think my bhakti has always been towards Shakti, always been towards creation, always been towards animal nature and things like that. And that bhakti has brought me where I am. This bhakti
Mm.
has made me who I am. That's why necessarily when I'm mentioning bhakti, I'm not mentioning any deity, devta, bhagwan, god, anything in it, because bhakti can be very different. So yes, this bhakti, it did bring a lot of things in my life, did help me grow a lot, help me experience a lot of things beyond what I knew. And it did cause a lot of destruction. It costed me a lot of relationship because I could
Mm.
no longer be in those friendships, on those relationships, because I could not align with that thought process
Yeah.
anymore. My frequency had changed. A lot of things fell off in my life. For example, I was in corporate before, so I had financial security. But because of this bhakti, because of this devotion towards myself, towards my journey, towards deity, like I could not be in that space anymore. I lost financial security for a certain while when I left my corporate and I was trying to build my own business. So yes, in a way, it has caused its own destruction. It has caused its own construction and creation. But I feel that if I would not have chosen this path, then also the construction and destruction would be going on, because that's the way of life. So if it is the way of life and if it is a cycle that I cannot escape, I would rather have bhakti towards my growth and my path.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the divine bhakti, I think I have experienced the most of that bliss, that presence in Banaras, Kashi. Kashi, I always say Ashi is Ashi in Kashi, like thing.
Wow, yeah.
Ashi, I feel my name comes from Kashi for a reason. Whenever I go to Kashi, even if I'm not sitting in the temple, like, you can sense like a very strong presence. And if you're in Kashi, you will be in bhakti throughout, even when you're eating, even when if whatever you are doing. So that I have experienced there. And second, very powerful bhakti experience. Bhakti as in like my own, where I don't have to force devotion. It's coming naturally, like the surrender, the reverence. That came to me in Kamakhya. And actually a lot in my life changed after the Kamakhya visit. And what I did there, and there was a very powerful message that Ma Kamakhya gave me during that time. Power was something that was that theme that for me during that time, the confusion that I was having was around power and strength. And there was a very strong message that she gave me there. So if you go to Kamakhya temple, it's impossible that you will not feel some presence, some energy, some Shakti. But you will feel it very subtly. So the message that I got there was that your bhakti, your Shakti, none of that is ever loud. It's very subtle. If it is loud, then it's not bhakti. It's performance. It is asking for something. So if your if like inner voice or anything, all of that, if it is very, very loud, or like, oh, I am a healer, I'm a healer, oh, I'm a sadhak, I'm a sadhak. If it is like too loud, too out there, it's not bhakti, it's not Shakti. So bhakti and Shakti is only powerful when it's subtle, when it's not loud.
Wow. That's beautiful. Thank you. We did talk about Tantra sex. And also, I mean, I think in online Tantra, we hear a lot about sexual energy, which could also just be creation. But what do you think is the difference between using your sexual energy versus being consumed by it?
It's actually a very personal question at this time. So it's very interesting that you asked this question. First of all, one thing that I've seen and I've realized is that when you do sadhana and you do chanting or like practice, your sexual energy in the body increases. Okay. Whenever you experience orgasm in the body, that's Kundalini energy rising and touching your Sahasrara chakra. So the reason why sexual energy or sex or all these things, especially in tantric space, not seen as shame and is promoted and is told to be in touch with, is because that feeling that you get is basically your Kundalini energy rising. Now, the thing is that this sexual energy, two things I want to tell you. One, that sexual energy or desire is not something to shame, something to suppress, something to shut down. If this entire world stops experiencing pleasure from today onwards, from tomorrow, there will be a lot more crime. People will be frustrated. Secondly, the creation will stop. So it's not something to be ashamed of, something to be shamed, something that should not be there, something that needs to be suppressed. In fact, I personally feel that you need to be more in touch with that. I have personally seen that when I am sexually happy or when I am channelizing my sexual energy in a right way or experiencing sexual pleasure in a safe and intimate space, I am able to be a lot more in my feminine. I'm able to be a lot more in my practice, in my Shakti. My Shakti channelizing is way more powerful and effortless than other times. So this is also something that I am studying through my own experience and talking to a lot of female. But any kind of desire, is not something to be suppressed. If you have the desire to look a certain way, you have the desire to eat a certain kind of food, desire to experience pleasure, none of that is bad or to be suppressed. It becomes a problem when you cannot go on in your life without fulfilling that desire. When you are not able to feel yourself when that desire is not being fulfilled. When you are not able to dream, hope, visualize, or just enjoy or be in the present when the desire is not being fulfilled, that's when it is a problem. And that is when it needs to be, again, not suppressed but channelized. So if you are a sadhak and you are feeling a lot of intense sexual energy, or in general, you are somebody who feels like a lot of intense sexual energy, and in a way that is not healthy, because we know that it is not going now in a healthy space. So the moment you realize that, okay, maybe this is taking an unhealthy turn, that is when you need to understand that even that desire, that pleasure is Shakti. And that is not being channelized in the right way. And you need to let it out through other medium, through art, through creation, through movement, through yoga, through something.
Okay.
So don't shame it, don't suppress it, enjoy it, experience pleasure. We are supposed to experience pleasure, but don't become a slave. Don't become its slave. Don't stop living if this pleasure is not being fulfilled.
Yeah. Thank you. We talked a little bit about this, but is there anything more you would like to add about, what do you think, or where do you think people misuse Tantra the most?
Okay, so I'll give you an example. So last time when I went to Banaras, I met a woman in a temple at Manikarnika Ghat. It's very rare to find like a lot of women there. So there was a woman I was seeing, like she was for 2 days. I went there, and the third day, like she came to have a conversation with me, and I have a tattoo of Kali on my hand. So she looked at my hand and she said, you should not have this tattoo on your hand. And I said, why? And she said that you bleed, you go through menstrual cycle, you poop, you do different things, and she's supposed to be kept in a pure space. And she asked me, did your Guruji not object? And I said, he did object, but the thing is, I have my own journey, and I realized that Devi and I have a personal connection, and I am Devi myself. So when I don't want to say it like that, but when I'm eating, it's Devi also eating through me, because Devi is not actually a woman sitting there. It's the tattva, the essence, the energy that is in you, right? When I'm bleeding, she's bleeding with me. So whether I have her on my hand or not, she is experiencing, she is doing all of those things with me. And she said that, oh, this is a very interesting point of view. And can I have your number? Because I'm very new on this path. And I live in Banaras. So in case if I have any confusion or anything, I can ask you questions. I said, okay, cool. Then 2 months back, she gave me a call, and I sensed that she's in some kind of distress and she wants to ask something and she's not coming to the point. So I told her, is there something happening? And she was like, when you got initiated, did you give Guru Diksha to your Guru? I said, yes, I did. I gave him my favorite sweets and I offered him some clothes and some money. That's it. And she was like, is there anything else that you give as Guru Diksha? And I said, no. And then something clicked in me that there's something wrong that has been asked out of her. So I asked her, did somebody ask something out of you? Initially, she was very hesitant. And then she eventually told me that the person who initiated her into the path, when the Guru Diksha happened, she said that, do I need to give you some Diksha? Because if you're initiating, you need to give some Diksha. And he said, no, not now. When I need it, I'll ask from you. And then later, when they got in touch, you happen to share a lot with your Guru. So she shared that she's going through something and she needs to do this because she wants to gain siddhi for her children. And she said that I am ready to whatever it takes, but I want to make my children's life less miserable and happy, not like me. And then he started demanding her sex as Guru Diksha. Now, I felt really fortunate that she called me and I could tell her that this is not it, because she thought that actually in Guru Diksha, sometimes you offer that. And so I told her that get out of that space as soon as possible. It does not work like that. In fact, the Guru, even the sex part that I was telling you about in Tantra, even that time the Guru does not do it with their Sishya. So this is like just a very small example that I'm telling you. Then there was one time like somebody messaged me on Instagram. There was a video of me dancing near an abandoned house near my house where I live right now, and my dog was actually crossing. In that video, like my dog crossed from one corner to the other, and of course that guy didn't know that she is my dog, and he looked at my video and he said that I saw your video and I'm a Bhairavi sadhak, and Bhairavi is asking me to tell you this, that there is this video and this building is haunted, and the dog who crossed from there, that dog actually was the demon who basically got into your auric field and left. And I'm like, that's my daughter. That's not a demon. So, like, so all these things now,
Oh, wow.
fortunately, I am not that scared, and I feel protected, and I feel like taken care of, and I'm doing my certain practice, staying in touch with my body and everything. So I have that confidence to shut it down. But there are a lot of people who will actually get scared and be vulnerable. That, oh my God, like it is happening. Okay, what do I need to do? Okay, you need to do this, you need to do this. And eventually, like, they'll either take money out of you or something. There was this European woman that I connected with on Instagram recently, and she was supposed to join my workshop, but she said that I cannot join your workshop because a Baba in Kedarnath, he looted all the money that I had in the name of Mahadev. So people do these things, and all these things, it happens in this space. That's why I tell everybody that, especially in the tantric space, if you are a female, um, although everybody needs to be a little aware of this fraudulent things and everything, but especially if you are a female, you cannot enter this space without being in touch with your intuition, your body, and your emotion.
Thank you. It's important to stay safe, and I'm so glad that women
Yeah.
got connected with you
She had
through
finished,
Kali's.
and she had just finished the Kali Sadhana the day she called me. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay. Wow. That is powerful. I was actually thinking in terms of, manipulating or misusing with God in terms of getting these manifestations that are not really meant for you. But I've heard of people, manipulating energy and power and using mantras to get these things that are not even something they should be asking for. Do you think it's actually prevalent, and do people do that? And I believe that you always get what you deserve, in the sense, if you're going to do bad shit's going to happen to you. So do you think people who manipulate, the energy like that and they be like that, they also have a bad end?
Have a answer with multiple layers to it. So I'm not going to say right or wrong, but I'm going to give you a perspective around it that has really played out for me. So of course, people use certain mantra to like attract a nice partner, money, wisdom, fame, and a lot of things like that. Is that wrong? I will answer that later. What I will actually tell you is that when you do pranayam, for example, pranayam, there's nothing wrong with it, right? But how do we breathe? We breathe in, we breathe out. That's our natural way of breathing. But when we do pranayam, what are we doing? We are manipulating our breath. We are breathing, holding, kumbhak, lot of different type of breathing technique. What are you doing? You're manipulating, right? When you are, let's say, doing manifestation practice, or you're even sitting for meditation, your natural state is chaos. You are trying to bring your awareness to your breath and calm your energy down. What are you doing? You're manipulating your prana, right? So manipulation of energy for your good, I don't think it's a bad thing. But if it is happening at the sake of someone else's suffering and harm, then like when you're doing it with the intention of, okay, I will take this from this person. When you are approaching it from that mindset, like for example, I also do certain sadhana to attract money in my life, or to do attract certain things in my life. I am not doing it that, okay, this person has money, I want their money to be mine. I want to make my own money. I want to have flow of my own money. I want to have my own community. I want to have my own partner. I'm not taking it away from anybody. Right? So the thing is that manipulation of energy, in my understanding, is not bad if your intention and your consciousness is clean. And if your what you are asking of is not coming from depriving somebody of something. Okay. Secondly, I also believe in one thing, that if you have a lot of Shakti, if you have a lot of strength, if you have a lot of fame, if you have a lot of money, all of these is Shakti. Money is Shakti, fame is Shakti, psychic power is Shakti. So if you have a lot of Shakti in any way, abundance of Shakti in your life, you cannot just have it all on and not share it. So do manipulate the energy to give yourself the comfort, peace, whatever you require. We all deserve it. And there is a text that actually, why did like someone create a text that if you want to attract money, do this, if this was wrong? It is written in our text. Why Kamlatmika comes into picture? Because there are these aspects that is important, right? So manipulation of energy is not bad. Asking your deity for certain things is not bad. Being its slave, harming somebody, approaching it with an egoist or wrong intention, that causes the problem. So go ahead, if you are a Tantra sadhak, go attract money, attract partner, do all these spells and everything. Don't harm anybody.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that when I asked, because my thought process was that, there must be people who are hoping harm for others because, oh my God, this person did XYZ to me. Now I want Devi to punish them. So yeah, that was that was where my thought process, that I'm sure people kind of do that. But yeah, I mean, you clarified the intention is what matters. What kind of responsibility do you think comes with being seen as a guide?
Responsibility for sure is one, that before you go out and help anybody or give gyan to anybody, share any of your wisdom, embody it, change your life. So the first step of any sadhana has to start with improving your own life, improving your own mindset, your own body, your own lifestyle. So that's one thing, that if you are a healer and you're going around telling people certain thing but you are not able to do it, it will cause a lot of internal clash in you, and eventually it's going to come face to face someday, and it will not be nice. So first thing is your responsibility towards your own well-being and your own betterment. That's number one. Number second is that you need to give but have a boundary. So your responsibility is, of course, if you are a healer or you're an empath or you're on this path, you are on this path because you're supposed to help somebody. So you should be doing that. But a lot of time we end up exhausting ourselves, that it's 10 or 11 in the night and somebody is having a crisis situation. Your body is not in the space to hold it. But because you have taken that responsibility of being a healer so much in your own being, that you're not giving yourself space to breathe as well. Third and most important thing is share the knowledge that you have. Now, again, I might get a lot of hate for saying this, but a lot of people I know who are in this space, they are so hesitant to share their knowledge, not just with people, but also with fellow light workers, spiritual facilitators, because they feel that, oh, if I share this wisdom with them, what if they end up like getting more clients or making more money? Or what if I share this with the client and he or she will stop being dependent on me and I will not be able to make money? One of the main purpose of you being on this path is sharing the wisdom, sharing the medicine, sharing. So that is also, I think, very, very important. And last, which again, I think is very personal and is coming from a very personal bias place, is to be authentic. If you are somebody who is a healer or who has some name, some fame, or people follow, or some people look up to you, and you are doing certain things, certain practice where you are not able to be consistent, where you are not able to follow the right path, but you are not sharing that aspect of yours with other people. You are just sharing all the amazing sadhana and siddhi that you got, but the places where you lack, you are not sharing that human experience of a sadhak. What it does is that when the person is listening to me, they will already have a lot of self-doubt that I'm not able to be consistent. And when the person who is their guide and who's looking up to them and they see them and put them on pedestal, that, oh my God, this person never makes mistake. So there is definitely something wrong with me. This should not happen. As a coach, as a guide, as a healer, Everybody makes mistake. Everybody goes through their times of grief. Everybody gets weak in their knees. But if you just keep sharing all the light and the strong aspect of your life and not share your vulnerable, weak moments, it gives the other person a sense that there's something wrong with me because this person is absolutely fine doing it, but I am not able to be consistent. So your authenticity will help your client, whoever is listening to you, your follower, your friends, everybody, a lot more than you showing up as the powerful human being.
Yeah. Right. Wow. Yeah. Thank you so much. That was very, very powerful. Honestly, this whole episode, I'm like so excited because I think there's so many beautiful nuggets in this that is really gonna, like, if someone really sits with this episode, they're gonna learn a lot. And I don't know, I just feel called to tell this to you that I really would love to see if, when you have the time and space to just put more of these out there, because I feel like you have so much wisdom to share. And I think just take a camera and start recording it.
Thank It's actually, see, now when we are talking, it's easier for me to talk about it. Like when somebody is not asking me the question. So that's what I'm saying, that as a healer, as a guide, I also go through this process that, oh my God, like, why would anybody listen to me? Like, why would, like, we also go through our own sense of insecurity. But again, if your work or your story is able to help even one person, it's totally worth it. So yeah, I'll do that more. I also, like,
Yeah.
I'm creative in a very different
Yeah.
way. I'm not like really a very marketing. I, I have been actually a marketer for 7 years before I did that. So despite that, marketing my own self is something that is very little difficult for me. So I'm going through my own process. But thank you so much for telling me that. I'll do more of it.
Um, okay, I'm gonna just ask you one last question. So, whoever's listening to this right now, and anyone, if they're feeling pulled towards tantra or feeling more drawn towards a more spiritual life and connecting with the divine, but they are afraid of what they might uncover in the process, like, is there any advice or anything you would like to tell them to really stay the course and stick with the path and not to be afraid?
First of all, whether it's Kali, whether it's Dhumavati, whether it's like Chamunda or anybody, whoever you are scared, first of all, know that you are not scared of that deity or scared of meeting that aspect of you. Because Chamunda and Kali, all these aspects, they don't just live outside. You also become Chamunda at times. You don't like that aspect of yourself. That's why you are trying to not meet or like scared of that aspect, because you have the fear of unfolding that aspect of you. So, no matter what practice you are doing, even if you're chanting or doing Tantra or practicing Vaishnava or any other pathway, you need to keep doing your shadow work and your self work. That is non negotiable, because these fears and all these things also come from the lack of work on ourselves. For example, how can I be scared of something that I don't even know whether is right or wrong or is fierce or not? How do I know this? Because somebody practiced it and they said that it is scary. So now I'm scared. So that fear is not your fear, actually. It's coming from some stories, some people, some noises, some voices, right? So, when you actually sit with yourself, you understand all these layers a lot more. So you cannot just go in thinking that, oh, I have fear, I need to do something to let this fear go, or I'll start when the fear goes away. You have to sit with that fear, understand that fear, where is it coming from? Secondly, what I have experienced that when you also learn about Kali, for example, Kali is seen as the most fierce goddess, right? When you learn about Kali, there are a lot of roop or facets of Kali. There's Saumya Kali, there's Ugra Kali, right? So there's an entire spectrum. So all these energy, they lie on the entire spectrum. Who you are, what is the energetic state of the person that you are, is mirrored in that spectrum. If I am as a person this ugra in my real life, or I lose like my things like that and I become this aggressive or fierce, I am going to manifest this form of Kali. If I am Soumya, but I also know how to draw my boundary, because Kali is not about aggression. She's about cutting what is not right for you. So if I am somebody who cuts people out of my life without creating drama, without fighting, without all these things, in a Soumya way, I'm going to attract the Soumya version of Kali. Okay. So the fear is that what if I experience something that is too much for me and I can't take it? If you are Soumya and if you are not supposed to take it, Devi will never reveal that aspect or that facet of herself to you. She's not here to scare you. So do not listen to other people's experience. Do not listen to what other people's story and experiences have been. Try and test it out yourself and see how and what you feel. For example, our mothers have been harsh to us a lot of times in the childhood, but that doesn't mean that she does not love us. Maybe she thought that this is supposed to be taught to us in a harsh way. It is right way, wrong way.
Yeah.
I'm not here to comment. I'm sensitive, so for me, it can be a wrong way, but for some people, it can be a right way. But it is a way to teach me something that she feels is right for me. And even when she's angry, she has not disowned me. She still loves me. So that mother is also like that. I also feel that Shakti reveals herself with the relationship that you associate with her. If you see her as mother, she will make you things experience as mother. If you see her as your own reflection, she will show you very ruthless, very raw, because like it's you. If you see her as friend, if you see her as guide, the different ways they show up. So first understand what relationship you want to share with her. I am sensitive and I am also like, I used to get scared a lot. So I was like, oh, mother is the safest for me. So I will go ahead with mother. Now, as I'm on this journey, there is still that mother aspect, but now I'm dropping down to, okay, this is aspect of me only. So I'm coming on that level. Do you see how you are? And according to that, you can form your relationship. And also, there's some people who do all tantric, das Mahavidya, all kind of sadhana. And there's some people I know who just stick to Devi, Durga, or some Soumya Devi, and they do her sadhana for the rest of their life. Both the pathways are right. So if you are too scared, but you also want to be on this path, you do not need to force yourself to do fierce deity if it is not naturally coming. You do Soumya deity because it's the same Shakti. Right? So problem happens when we start to go against our nature because everybody else is doing it.
Wow, I always saw Devi as mother, and now I'm actually curious to maybe in the future develop and kind of see as an aspect of me. But I just love that protective mother energy we get when we think about Devi. Thank you for sharing that perspective. I think that's very interesting, and I think it'll serve people who are on this path. With that, I think we can come to an end for this segment. Before we leave, is there anything you want to share?
Specifically for women, because women are my favorite. So for all the Shaktis who are on this path, there's one thing that I want to share is that this path is already very stereotypical, very patriarchal, very male dominated, very restricting to female, and in general not very favorable to female as compared to men. So one thing that I want to tell you is that a lot of times people face a lot of problem within themselves because they feel that they are this really fun girl who like to party, but like all the tantra practitioners that I've seen, they like stay to themselves. So they'll try to suppress that side to become like the right way. There's some people who like wearing jeans and maybe a crop top, and they are devoted to Devi, but they see that all these sadhak, they put like a bindi and they wear a certain kind of clothes, so they'll try to suppress that side of it. I want to tell you that you do not need to suppress any aspect of your being to be a sadhak. You don't need to wear any particular cloth. You do not need to be a particular kind of woman. You do not need to do anything to be a sadhak. The only thing that you need to take care of or understand or integrate with you is that the practice that you are doing, how aware you are of that, how much you are in touch with your body, your Shakti, your personal relationship with that. Now, again, what I'm saying is coming from my personal relationship with her. This is what she has taught me, because I had this confusion and I had this like friction going on in my life that I like doing this, but my guru is not doing this, but all these people that I look up to, they don't do this. Do I need to be like this? And I actually was like this, but I felt my Shakti was most suppressed and minimal during that time. But when I started like owning up, being authentic, showing up as I am, doing what I like, despite having this like all these notion that as a practitioner, I need to look like this, I need to talk like this, I need to address somebody as dear or love. Like I don't need to do all of that. I can just be myself. I can say that, oh, I don't have my shit together. I don't need to say ki like my life is like lost. I talk like this, right? So
Yeah.
and I talk like this because she has made me and created me like this. So
Yeah.
I don't want to go against her creation. So basically a lot of time I see that people struggle a lot, that they're
Yeah.
suppressing their natural way of being, their natural likes, dislikes, because they have this expectation or this
Mm.
picture and notion in their head that the people are supposed to look like this or be like this if they are a sadhak. So this is the most important message, that you do you,
Mm.
girl. You don't need to be like anybody else. You don't need to wear any special clothes. You don't need to put like crystals or whatever in your hand. Like I wear this Rudraksh all the time in my hand because these are the malas that I got initiated with. So it is very special to me. I'm not doing this because I will be extra protected. So if it adds meaning to
Mm.
you, you do that. I like putting bindi. I like
Mm.
looking like this. So I do that. But the days when I want to wear a dress and I want to show off my leg and I want to be in a huntress mode, even then I'm a sadhak. So you do you. Don't let the world tell you how you as a sadhak should
Yeah.
be.
Wow, yeah, thank you so much. That was so important for everyone to hear because I think, yeah, I mean, we forget that, we can live in duality. You don't have to be just one specific way that society has asked us to be. So, thank you so much, Ashi. This was really wonderful. I'm so, so, so grateful for you to join and for doing this with me. And I hope to see more of your work online and hope to stay connected. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you so much for inviting me here. And thank you so much to everybody who is listening to it. And thank you, and forever in reverence of Devi for flowing through me during this podcast.